Jed Hoyer is here, the president of baseball operations for the Chicago Cubs. We're at Old Crow. We're excited. Jed, you got to feel like, man, the dark times we had to navigate some things, and like you're on the precipice of taking a step. You feel that way?
I do. That's what I've been saying is I feel like we're on the front edge of something really special, and I think today sort of starts that. So, yeah, I definitely drove into work with some real optimism today, and I feel like the fans feel that, and the players feel that as well. So it's all good.
So how was everything when you went out and you know, trying to get Dansby Swanson or Trey Turner, one of these guys, and they go, well, you guys have been, going through this rebuild. Like, what do you tell them? Do you let them in on your plan?
Always. Yeah, I mean, I think I said that about Dansby in the press conference. Like, one of the things I really liked about him was that he was interviewing us. Like, why should I do this? Why should I come to you? Which is great. You don't want a guy that, just pay me the most money. He wanted to know, how are we going to win? Because that's what he did at Vanderbilt. That's what he did with the Braves. So I thought that part was great. First of all, I think it's always good to have to sell yourself. I think that when you're talking about, your team and what you're going to do, I think that sort of sharpens the tool to have to go through that sales process and talk through it. And I actually really enjoy that. I think that part is really good. The other thing I would say is that this place sells itself. Like, I don't. We've had a lot of success. We bat a very high percentage on the free agents we really target. I'm humble enough to realize, like, I am a pretty good salesman, but this place is a lot better salesman than I am. And players want to be here. They know, great city, great ballpark, amazing in the summer. I don't consider this summer yet, but
no,
amazing in the summer. And I think that what we've done over the last 12 years to make it a place where players feel really comfortable is really good. So that reputation is around the league. So any of those stories that we were no longer a desirable place, no, we have a lot of interest here, and I think it really helps us to be able to recruit free agents.
Jed, what does opening day mean to you?
It's kind of rebirth. I think that I think the beauty of baseball is every day, or almost every day, and this has become sort of a part of the fabric of everyone's life for this 6 or hopefully seven months. And this is the first step in that. My career record on opening day is horrendous. And so I try to look at this as like it's an enjoyable day, sort of a New Year's type of thing where it's back. And, for me, there's nothing better than, when we're going to have box scores for the next 6 months. I know that's the same for a lot of fans. So it's a celebration of why we love baseball and the fact that it's back. And, in most places it's the beginning of spring. In this place, it's a little different than the beginning of spring because we got 6 more weeks of bad weather. But I do think that that's how I try to look at it. And it's fun to see everyone, feeling that way, feeling like this is something, the first step in a long race.
Jed, what is the biggest difference in the makeup of this year's roster versus last year's?
Well, I'd say, first of all, I just think the group of guys we brought in, just a great group of guys, an awesome vibe all spring. Just high, all the guys were high quality makeup guys with very good reputations from the places they came from. So that part's been amazing. I do think that, let's be honest, last couple of years, I think people have been kind of waiting for the deadline or, looking at it and saying, like, if things don't go almost perfectly, then we're going to have to make some moves at the deadline. So I think even on opening day, there was a little bit of waiting till the middle of the summer to see what happens. And we don't have that. And I think that's a really great feeling. I think there's a lot more excitement in that clubhouse. And I think that really helps the vibe of spring training.
So I had a chance to spend significant time with Pete Crow-Armstrong and with Matt Mervis. Sat down and talked with these guys. Started looking through some of the deals that you made. And it's easy to go, hey, they sent $177 million on Dansby Swanson and $68 million on Ty. I think the thing that is really not given enough credit is Kevin Alcantara is a top 100 prospect. Now, again, he's got to prove it at this level. That's in the Rizzo deal. Pete Crow-Armstrong, that's your best prospect. That's in the Baez deal. Hayden Wisniewski was an amazing trade. Again, he's got to continue to prove it. Do you feel like we've made some really good moves? People just don't know it yet.
I do, yeah. I mean, I think those deals were really painful, and obviously there's a lot of backlash for those deals. I do think that when you look back on those trades, I try to look at it just the totality of the talent. I mean, I think that individually, guys have to prove themselves. And the guys have to come up here and actually do it. I think that's the key. But I think that when you look at the totality of the talent we brought in, I think we were able to really change the young player talent and make the organization more healthy. And I think that's the thing that for when I took over, we were at the end of this run, we got really expensive. Our system wasn't where it needed to be. And I think right now, obviously we spent a lot of money this winter. We still have payroll flexibility going forward. And we have a group of young players that's coming up. I think that's the key for me is yes, some of these trades I think will work out exceptionally well. Which of them I think is hard, and I never want to put too much pressure on prospects. But the totality of the talent, I think, is really, really terrific.
I want to talk about your roster versus the rest of the National League Central. Cap and I were saying before we got here, I feel like you're building towards something. If it's not this year, then you're building toward sustainability, being the playoffs every year. So how do you look at your roster versus the rivals in the National League Central?
Yeah, well, I think it's going to be a really fun division in the next couple of years. I think both Pittsburgh and Cincinnati are still a little bit in the building process, but they have a lot of young talent as well. I think Cardinals' offense is phenomenal. I think I'd probably put their position playing group up against almost anyone in baseball. And listen, one of the things I learned in Boston, when you have the Yankees there, they're always there. And that's kind of your measuring stick all the time. And the Cardinals are for us. And, we got past them for a pretty long period of time. And, right now that's the goal, is to get back and past them. But right now I think, they're clearly the team to beat in the NL Central. They should be. And then the team they're playing today, I mean, these guys have been really consistent. Their starting pitching is always excellent. The first 2 days we're going to face, two of the better starters in the National League. And as long as you have that kind of starting pitching, you're always going to be a competitive team.
The system, and this is not a shot at what went on the first 10 years. You won the flipping World Series that I remember Theo saying to me, you need to drop a little weight, work out. We'll get it right, but it's going to take a little time. You got there. The greatest single thing I've ever covered or cheered for in my life was that night in November in Cleveland. That said, the system and the way you're doing business has changed. I looked through your system last night. I'm like, boy, not every guy's going to make it, but there's a deep pool of guys. And the more you have, the better chance they're going to make it. What are you doing differently since Tom handed you the key?
Well, I mean, I think we're doing a lot of things very similar. I mean, I think I am really proud of what we did. I think what we didn't do well enough, I think, is that we didn't evolve when we were on top. I think in 2015 we had the number one system in baseball. We won 97 games, and we won the World Series in 16. And at that moment, we should have been evolving our player development the way things were going. With the way we're doing things now, we didn't do that. I think that probably given some of the success we had, we didn't feel like we needed to make those changes. And I think we paid for it. And I think, winning is sort of a lagging indicator on your farm system health and on your organizational health. I think that we won in 15, 16, 17, went to the 3 NLCSs in a row because of what we did 12, 13, 14. And I think that when we were on top, we didn't evolve quickly enough. And I think that we paid for that, and I think we got to a place where we knew the transition was going to be difficult from all those guys. We couldn't get those guys signed to extensions, and that was challenging, but we should have had a group ready after that. And whether it was through trade or whether it's through poor drafting, we didn't have that. And so that's been my biggest focus, is how do we just push player development as hard as we possibly can and get to a place where we're getting the most out of every player. And I know we're on the right track. I think we'll see the seeds of that a little bit this summer. And I think that starting this summer, probably towards the end of the season and going forward, we'll be able to break in a number of players every year. And that has to be the goal. It has to be have it AA and AAA stacked, be able to bring guys up and not be relying on free agency so much. That's the hardest part of free agency. I don't want to be this active. We had to fill so many holes the last 2 years based on the amount of talent we lost, and when you're trying to do that in free agency every year, it's so difficult. And I look at the best organizations can go into an off season and be like, okay, we need to get these 2 positions, be totally focused on a couple things, not as wide
not
a
7
focus.
guys.
And so, hopefully over the next couple of years, we can get to that place where we, are much more payroll efficient with the young players and be able to be more targeted in free agency.
Yeah, how difficult is that push and pull, though? Cap and I talked about this all the time. We'll just use the Dodgers for an example, right? They have veteran players. They can bring up young players and be able to plug and play. How difficult is that for you to be able to say, okay, we got these veterans in here because that's good for the locker room, but yet we have these young players that we want to develop and win. That's a lot at one time, is it not?
Yeah, I mean, that's always the biggest challenge. And what you want to do is get to a place where you're kind of breaking in maybe one starting pitcher a year, maybe, one everyday player. Like, it's really hard. What we did in 2015 is not recommended, and I think that was, I think we spoiled a lot of people with that. With bringing up, 3 or 4 guys at the same time and having them all contribute. Normally, you got to do kind of one guy at a time, because otherwise, you're the ups and downs of young players are real, and if you can dedicate, a spot to development, you can't dedicate 3 if you're trying to win. And I think that's the challenge.
It looks from my seat like what fans have said, God, I don't want another rebuild twice in 10 years. It looks like because of the depth of the system, which is by design, whether it's Ben Brown in the David Robertson deal or Hayden Wisniewski in the Efros deal, when that one crossed, that was the one I went, whoa, because Efros was a really good pitcher for you, but he's 28, he's a reliever, and you got a starter that now is part of your rotation for the next 7 years. You control him, or 6 years.
Yeah, that was a hard deal to do because, we had developed Scott. He's such a wonderful kid. We had, he dropped down and had so much success. And, he was the most popular guy we had last year at the deadline.
So are guys calling you? Is that guy available?
Yeah. We had 4 teams in the AL East trying to get him at the same time. And it was because he had amazing pitch data. He was performing really well. He dominated right-hand hitters. And, all the teams in that division needed that. And we didn't go into the deadline thinking we were going to trade him at all. But it became clear as we sort of got a couple of days out, like, we have to do this. I mean, his value is so high, and he's a reliever, and we, where we are right now as an organization, I was thinking, like, we need, like, when you're building the house, you need, like, the big pillars, the big blocks to build it. I feel like a reliever like Scott Efros is like a painting on the wall, right? He's a finishing touch, but he's not the structure of the house.
But the team you traded him to was at that point.
Exactly. So that they're doing it because they need that player who, he's the painting that goes. He's the accoutrement, right? But he's not the big building block of a house. And like Wisniewski to us was a starting pitcher that we need, that we can control for a long time. And so anyway, that was why we did the deal. But it was a hard one to do because we were trading a guy that was really valuable, has 5 years of control. It's just that position to us was more of a finishing touch than a building block.
So we're never going to make a trade with a major league team. We're never going to have your job. That said, when that is going on and your phone is ringing and it's whoever it is, the Blue Jays, the Yankees, the Orioles, Toronto, whoever is calling you, do you call back and say, Brian Cashman, okay, if you want him, I got to have that guy because in your division, somebody else has a better offer than you currently have? How does the trade mechanism go?
So I am a believer that you always want to be really focused in what you're asking for. That people will push different players on you. That will you guys talk about this guy or that guy? I always want to be like, hey, this is the guy we want. And then he was a guy we had targeted. We've done some deals with them over the years. I think Brian's wonderful to deal with. He's very focused on what he wants. He runs a great organization, and he's always he knows what he needs to do to try to win the World Series. And so I think that's when you're a seller, you try to maximize the value of those players that are really valuable to contenders. And Efros was the number one guy last year. I mean, we got so much interest in him because of the things he did really well are exactly what you need in a pennant race.
Jed Hoyer with us here on Kaplan J. Hood on ESPN 1000 and streaming on the ESPN Chicago app as we broadcast live from Old Crow Smokehouse here in Wrigleyville. Just a conversation about David Ross, not a question. So the hire of David Ross, originally I thought here's a guy here that's been a catcher, bullpen guy, so the pitching should be taken care of because he wasn't always a starting catcher. He was in the bullpen, so he knows about bullpen and knows about pitching. Could you tell me your thoughts on David Ross? What do you like about the job that he's done? The pitching is one thing, but it might be something else we're missing.
I love working with him. He's awesome energy every day. He's just a person that people gravitate towards, and you can't define that, but everyone wants to be around him. Huge presence and personality, but also holds people accountable. Like he's a real leader in that sense, where he earns your trust, and then he'll tell you how to get better. And I think the players really respect that. He tries to improve every year, every day. He spends the offseason talking to the R&D staff about things he can do better. So he's not he's not dogmatic in how he thinks about it. He knows he has to constantly evolve. I think he and Andy Green make a great pairing. They constantly talk about the game, constantly talk about strategy. I know he'll continue to evolve and get better over the years, but I think we've got a guy right now that I couldn't be happier that he's our manager. And when I go down there today and go see him, it's a wonderful feeling to know that the team's in good hands, and then and also know that the players really respect him.
I know you can't talk about players and other teams, but if you feel like you've kept your powder dry to an extent that if next winter a certain guy hits the market, whoever that is, and it's going to cost, we saw what these deals are going for, $350, $450, that you have the ability to make that move if you feel it's the right thing for your team.
Yeah, 100%. And that's something that is really important. That I think when we talk about organizational health, there was a time when our payroll did get bloated. We got to the end of what we could do, and you couldn't make those moves, and we're not there, which is a really good feeling. And when I look at where we are, I'm excited about where we are, but I also know, there's definitely some impact, offensive potential that we could use. And certainly, you could always use, in front of the rotation starters, and hopefully, last time we did this, we went out and we spent a lot of money on one top rotation starter. We traded for another, and then Kyle Hendricks was almost a third. And so, talent like that comes from different places. When we traded for Jake Arrieta, we didn't think he was going to win a Cy Young. And so sometimes when we talk about impact, sometimes impact comes by paying for impact, like John Lester. Sometimes it comes from places you don't necessarily expect, and certainly my hope is that we can do both, like we did last time.
Jed, what's the latest on Suzuki?
He is playing defense in minor league games. He's taking batting practice every day, running the bases. I think this weekend he will start to play or start to take live at bats in Arizona, and then hopefully once he does that for 3-4 days, he'll probably go out on a rehab assignment. So he's doing well. Knock on wood. He's progressing well, and hopefully he's here in not too long.
I was telling my partner, the World Baseball Classic was fun. You wouldn't watch any of it because you were so ready for Major League Baseball.
Yeah, and it was March Madness. I love baseball. It's my favorite sport.
But he's got 5 TVs in his basement, just like I do. We could watch multiple things. We could watch March Madness. We could watch the World Baseball Classic.
NBA.
Bowling. You can watch all those things if you want to, right?
It was awesome theater. I thought the way it ended was like central casting with Ohtani against Trout. I felt terrible for Seiya because that the Japanese team was so good, and I think I saw some stat like 95% of the TVs in Japan were tuned in.
It was insane.
And so you think to yourself how much he felt like he was missing out on not being able to do that. You want to show out for your country, right? And want to be on the field, and he would have been batting 3rd or 4th for them. And so I did feel really badly that he couldn't participate. He had his jersey, and he's like, I'm not, felt like I was dead.
I also love that you got the extension done with Nico Horner. It allows him at 29 to be a free agent, which I'm sure was important to him.
Horner fans.
But you also got 2 years of ARB. He's going to get paid, and you bought a year of free agency.
Yeah, it was. We went through a million structures, but Nico knew and his agents knew that we definitely wanted to get something done, and he's top of the scale in terms of people and makeup. I've been around. I mean, just an incredible kid, wants to get better every day, wants to be a great teammate, be a leader, and I think this gives him a chance to do that. And when we did this deal, don't often do an extension where you say, hey, hopefully this is the first of many, but we couldn't get aligned on a longer deal, in part because he's had such a weird progression. I mean, he shouldn't have been in the big leagues in 19, but had to be
He
because
got
we
a
had
call. He was laying on his mom's
Yeah.
couch.
2020. He should have been in the minor leagues, but we had COVID, so there was no minor league. So he's had a weird progression, but felt like this extension was a good first step, and hopefully he's here for a long time.
Jed, lastly, what is your message to Cub fans that are listening globally to our show? What do you want to tell them?
No, to me, we're on the front edge of something really special. I think that we should be really competitive this year, but I think when you sort of look at where things are in terms of our young talent in the big leagues and controllable talent, and where we are with our minor league system, where we kind of are with all of our scouting mechanisms, I think we're in a really good place right now. And I think that I think this summer, like people are going to see all those seeds we've been planting for the last few years. I think people are going to start to see what's happening in the minors is going to be obvious. I think what's happening up here with our young players is really obvious. And like I said, I think we're on the front edge of something really great.
I talked to Matt Mervis, and he said, honest to God, he said, I didn't get drafted. He goes, it's only a 5-round draft because of COVID. He said, I'm furious. I take 24 hours and go walking by myself. I don't want my parents around. He goes, and then I woke up Saturday morning. I got my laptop out. He said, and I went through the salaries on Spot Track of every team. He said, you can ask my mom. I wrote down 2 teams. I said, it's the Cubs or the Yankees. The Yankees are trying to win right now. The Cubs are going to rebuild a little bit. Rizzo's going to the Yankees. I'm going to the Cubs. Is that how it went down from your end?
Well, so it's funny that was one of the most fun days I've ever had in baseball. So basically, you get all the passed over players after the 5-round draft, and they said you could not negotiate at all up until I think at 8 a.m.
The next day, Sunday.
You could call.
Right.
And I was in. It was a couple of days later. It gave us a couple of days.
Yeah, Friday was the draft.
Yeah.
Sunday you could call.
I just remember being at my in-laws in St. Louis. I had driven down there, and I was on the phone walking around their backyard for like 12 consecutive hours, like nonstop on the phone, just pitching people. And he was our number one guy.
That's what he said.
Yeah, I called him. We had like probably 4 or 5 people that had a list of like 10 or 15 each. And he was the first guy on my list. He was the first call I made. And we pushed him really hard. That was a good one. And it's great because I thought we had a great process. We signed a bunch of good players through that. We had a really good process. It's nice that it was rewarded with a guy like him.
He had an Excel spreadsheet of every team and salaries and depth. I was like, that guy's sharp.
Yeah, 100%.
Jed, thanks for stopping by, man. Have a great season.
We appreciate you.
Always. Thank you, fellas.
You're the best.
All right.
Jed Hoyer.